think that kind of alluded to the fact this is a real festival that does not exist. So you're welcome.
It's super cool. Well, all right. Well, let's jump into it. If you are watching live, you can ask questions as we're going along. Dale's here to share tips and tricks and like little bits of advice and some of his process. So if you've got any questions, as we're rolling through, and Dale is also very proficient in Photoshop as well. So if you're like, hey, like, could I do this in Photoshop, or could I do this and then bring it into Photoshop, stuff like that, don't hesitate. This is a safe space. Please ask questions as we're rolling along.
Yeah, please do. Like we said, this is just like hints and tips. We're not trying to create anything too crazy. So if you're an illustrator or use Illustrator and have any questions, I will do my best to kind of guide you in the right direction, I guess.
Nice.
But so we're just going to talk about, like, I guess poster design is going to be our core kind of overarching like artwork style that we're focusing on. So it's got a whole bunch of elements that we need to consider, which is composition, page layout, I guess graphics, colors, typography, relevance. Like, what relevance does the type have to the music or the video or the whatever it is that we're doing. But this is all just kind of like, we're essentially going to get to this point. But why did I pick that font? Why did I pick this character? It's all in fun. But if you guys have questions, just shout out. So I'm just going to get straight into it with just talking about the tools that I would use to kind of like compose, and this is probably going to go against everyone's opinion about doing this in Illustrator and doing it in InDesign versus doing it in InDesign. That's a page layout program, right? Like, that's purely and simply what it's for. But I get the same thing when I'm working in Illustrator. People say, couldn't you do it in Photoshop? So this is the luxury of having these programs that kind of complement each other, right? So we're just going to use Illustrator. I'll talk about the tools that I would use most, and that is this section up here: the pen tool, the pencil tool, the blob tool, shapes, squares, lines, all that sort of stuff. Just a little disclaimer that at the moment, I know you might see my pen tool do some funky things where it looks a little bit rigid. We think it might be a stream issue, not an Illustrator issue, so I can't fix that smoothness at the moment, so bear with me.
Can barely see it, actually. It might have even improved a little bit from when we were setting up, but we noticed there was just a little bit of a lag. So if you notice a little bit of lag, it's not Illustrator. It seems to be a streaming thing in one of the 10 things that we're using to like make it happen.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so anyway, with this whole process, I guess you always want to build like the bones of your artwork, whether that be illustration, page layout, whatever. Get some guides, get some grids. I'm not going to focus too much on getting this thing perfect and accurate to the theory of design or anything. I'm just going to have some fun with it. So we're going to create some shapes and create a layout. Then we'll talk about like having assets available and picking fonts and things like that. So this is the whatever festival. So firstly, to get to this point, I just use I will just make a page like of thumbnails, and I'll just start putting in some layouts, and I just use the rectangle tool, and I use the warp function here, and I'll just warp this to whatever shape I want. So let's use a flag so it's different over there. So you can use these warp tools on text or on shapes. So I'm just going to use it on this, and we're just going to create a little flag.
That's cool. That's a nice idea to think about, like the layout and using like the shapes tool, because rather than kind of doing it later, obviously you can move things around later and everything, figure out what works, but like doing it really early on to figure out your composition is pretty cool idea. Because I've often like kind of gone to finish an artwork and I'm like, oh man, everything's so crowded.
I think this is a nice way to allow yourself that mental kind of note where you're saying, okay, well, I know this is going to be my header. I might do the same at the bottom and have like a maybe the header's two words. So we got whatever festival that was. We've got that down there, so we can have whatever festival here. I know I want a graphic in there at some point, so this is going to be my graphic space, and they can overlap. That's fine because text and images can be intertwined. It doesn't matter. It's up to you. Um, Maybe keeping it centered would be good. So sorry, I just flicked to wireframe, and that wireframe is Command Y, so you can see all your anchor points and your center points of the artwork. And then yeah, so if I've got my little layout, just say we only want it like that. I know I've got a little bit of, I can have copy space down here, copy space at the bottom of the poster with some of those terms and conditions that no one reads.
Yeah, like not a real festival.
Yeah, not a real festival. I was very proud actually. Like I thought it was actually a compliment that they thought it was real.
It is, yeah, totally.
Yeah.
It's like it's like when you feel, I don't know, it's like when you have a portfolio and like someone like up and coming is kind of like, oh wow, like can I fill my portfolio with fake stuff? And I'm like, yeah, you absolutely should fill your portfolio with fake stuff because if it looks real, that's the point. It's like you can do,
and,
you know.
Well, I think isn't that like it would be the right way to produce a resume or folio, I guess, for that exact thing. So if you've got a magazine that wants to see your folio, you love the magazine, but you've never done magazine work, put some fake ads together, put some page layouts together. Like no one's saying like you're not allowed to. Just because you're an illustrator, you can be proficient in page layout, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't think you should hold back, and it's not like you're lying and saying you worked for another magazine. You're just showing them your skills. So
yeah, as long as you're not like, oh yeah, you know, do like a Nike fake layout and then you're like, by the way, I worked for Nike. It's like, that's
you can if it's for portfolio purposes, I think you can get away with it. And I would make a very clear note that that's it's only for folio's sake.
Yeah, totally.
So I would just build some layouts like this. I'd keep considering my graphics and stuff like that. If you're going to draw graphics that are horizontal, obviously leave space for horizontal graphics. But let's just use this little guy as our reference. Once I have that, what I can do, so I'm just copying this over here just so we can see the before and after. So if you've got, I don't know how many people know this, but like, so I said you can do this with the warp tool with text and shapes. So if I do whatever, let's make this bigger, and I know I want to do this, right? So there's two ways I can achieve having it on that that same plane, I guess. So I can do apply flag. So let's just do it the right way. I'll go to warp flag, and then you can play around with that to your heart's content, right?
Yeah.
And then, but say you want to do it, just there's another quick way that you can do it. So you can chuck it under the shape, and you select the shape and the text. Actually, I'm just going to change the text because I know it's going to look terrible if it warps like that.
I was going to say, like doing a lot of lettering with Myriad Pro.
Yeah, I'm just going to, let's choose any, like there's a lot of, let's just use this.
Do you have like, speaking of fonts, like do you have like you one of those people that has like a large array of lots of different fonts just kind of ready to go and you kind of play around with them? Or do you kind of try to find an individual font per like project or something like that? What's your approach to
if it's projects specific, I guess I'll try to find that font that's like appropriate to, let's just use this theme of posters. If it was a death metal or something, you want that real real crazy looking font. So that's kind of particular. You can't just go and chuck like Beavis or it's gonna look a bit weird. But I kind of have, like, you can see I've got a heap in here, like it goes forever, but I also like, there's a few free ones, there's some that I've paid for, but it's kind of like sometimes the text isn't the priority for me, and I'll focus so much on the illustration. And once that illustration's done, I can match the font to that,
Right.
if that
Yeah.
makes sense. But
Yeah.
if you're talking text only design and maybe like a cool background image or like photography, it'll be important to kind of source your text and have it appropriate for the project. So, but I've just got it more at the ready, whatever works.
Yeah. Nice.
So yeah, I got the whatever and the shape. And if you go down into object and you go into envelope distort, and then you say make with top object, so that would just like oh, sorry, what happened there?
Need the text behind, I think.
It should be on top. Why did that do that? Why is it doing that? Okay, all right. Look at it just proving me wrong right now. So let's try this. Why is it doing that? Something's going on here. Because that's behind. If you do behind, here we go. Yeah, that's my bad. All right, what is going on here?
Doesn't like it.
Yeah, Illustrator's been yeah, it's been a bit weird today. So let's try this again.
Didn't like your font choice. It's like, no.
Yeah, maybe it's yeah. Actually, you know what? Let's just, for argument's sake, let's try a different font. I don't think. No, it's just something's going very weird here. Let me try it over here on this font. Oh, sorry. Okay, I know why. Because this has it's not the font. Let's go back a few steps. It's not the font. It's the fact that this shape is. It hasn't. It's still reading it as a square.
Right.
But it's got the warp effect on it. So if I expand that shape, which I should have done.
Okay, you need to expand it first.
Sorry, we got caught up in the conversation.
Yeah.
All right, we're back on track. So if you want to do that, grab the shape and the text, and now do envelope. It should be fine. Yeah, so we'll fit it in there like that.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah,
nice.
so
I love that sort of stuff because that's the sort of thing that kind of you demo to someone and it just works for you. But it's important to see like the wait, what's going on? Why is it not doing what I want it to do?
Well, there you go, troubleshooting 101.
Yeah, there you go.
It wasn't the font, it wasn't the shape that I created. It was actually the fact that it still saw it as a square, a rectangle.
Yeah.
But that rectangle has an effect applied. So I think the Illustrator maybe just had a bit of a brain fart and didn't really know how to comprehend. So yeah, so we can do that. We're back on track. So the only difference is if you were to do if we had that font and we warped it with the warp tool. So this is the benefit of doing it this way. So you can warp it, but you can see it kind of like the letters start to like kind of go a little bit funny on the side here. Like they start like doing weird things. So but the benefit to that is you can go in and, you can still add type or change type if you have to. When it's like this, you can still do it, but it kind of like does this. It's not really like adding to the
right.
Like you can see like the way the shape changes. Like it's like it just keeps fitting the letters in there, and then it starts compressing the font. Where if you use the other way, it like adds it, and the flag continues to yeah. So I would use this way if you're kind of like heart set on whatever. Like right now, it's like that. But the other benefit to this, doing it like this, is you can go in and oops, where's my shape gone? Oh, my shape disappeared. So if you put the shape in like this, let's do festival. So drop festival in here. Let's do it in the same. All right. So when you drop this in, I'll do it again. So expand the square. Drop it in here. There's envelope distort, make with top, and I've got make sure the shape's on top. Right, so like that. And if you grab your points, so you can go in and like you can.
Oh yeah,
like
you can get weird with it.
Yeah, you can get real weird with it, like real weird, and it'll like, but it starts like bending it. It's not so much moving the type doesn't stay in that part and kind of taper. It just starts like distorting and things like that. But it's kind of cool if you like look. It still works. I can still read that it's festival. You can do what you want. There's no real rules here. It's just like whatever works, whatever fits the bill, and like you can go in and play with that until your heart's content. Make it you know, exactly how you want it. Like, so obviously this is pulling that point, so all the letters are leaning towards that point. But yeah, that's just another way of doing it. If you don't want to use the warp tool, you can create your shapes, your layouts, get them all fitting with that envelope tool, and that kind of works to get your type in there. So that's a handy little tool that I like using it because you can get pretty interesting shapes. Like some shapes, like this one's harder to probably get out of the warp tool. So that envelope tool, the envelope tool is quite like it's quite impressive actually. Like if you want to put, I don't know, let's see how it works. I'll just do one word. So it'll just fit into any shape that you need. Yeah, like you can
it's
get
pretty cool.
Yeah, you can definitely get weird with it. So that's that's one little trick that I think like maybe it gets overlooked. It's I don't know how many times I ever went past that and just went straight past it. Envelope distort. That's what we're doing. So it's dropping text underneath shapes and the shape kind of carrying the text into its shape.
Yeah.
So yeah, nice. That's kind of like getting the text component. And speaking of text, there's always room for improvement on all text, I guess. So like these are all fonts I've either bought or downloaded for free. Won't go into them too much, but if you do like typography and you want to change things, I'd always recommend like going in and outlining and just creating like new versions of it, whether that be like extended letters or let's ungroup this. So I'm just going to ungroup this text. All right, so you can extend letters. So I'd always go in and just grab by points and extend letters. This is the oldest trick in the book, but like you can get some cool little effects out of type that you like and kind of reinvent it, I guess.
Yeah, and kind of make it your own a little bit rather than kind of creating a logo or like kind of slapping a font down. You can tweak things just a little bit to make it a little bit more unique.
Like just making, let's just get rid of this little, it's rough, but using all these things to like just make that like your own little font, but like, really build off like these fonts, like this one, I like this solar space one, it's cool, but like maybe you want to add a little bit more flair to it, and you can go in and add some little like extra like little bits of, I guess, like thorns and stuff, and like straight away you've kind of like added a new degree of like detail on it.
Yeah,
I don't know, maybe you don't want this to go that way. You can cut it in. You can change the direction of this stuff. Like it's quite like the pencil tool can just add straight into that like font. So it's all one piece still. But yeah, I think typography is important. It's important to also know that like sometimes it's worth going in and playing around with and making sure that you're making your artwork unique to you, unique to the project. Like I clearly just used this one because I thought it went really well with this, like the cartoon kind of overtone that this had. So
yeah,
I just left it kind of as is. But again, you can go in and start adding some details in Illustrator, or like I said, you can jump into Photoshop, add some textures and that. But we can wait for that for tomorrow to explain that sort of stuff. Other little things so to consider, I've got like my artwork assets. Like when I'm creating this sort of project, I always want to make sure everything's kind of like its own little bit of individual artwork, so that when I get to this point, there's a high chance in 2023 that there's going to be someone um, who's going to receive this artwork and ask you to have it layered or ready to animate. I guess like
Right.
I'm not in animation. I don't really muck around with that too much, but I've had a few projects where it has been exactly that, and they're like, "Do you have the layered vector file so that maybe they want to have this guy like slide in, or maybe
Yeah.
the
Well,
spotlight."
I think even for the stream, I think I asked you for the original file so that because I had to
Yeah, yeah,
reformat it for a couple of things, and I just
exactly.
went into Illustrator, like copied a couple of elements and put
Yeah,
it in for the dimensions that I needed it
yeah,
for
yeah.
Instagram and YouTube and stuff.
And it was quite like it is quite easy.
So
Like
easy.
there's
Yeah.
like everything's. It's kind of like maybe these could have all been grouped together, or the little brick lines, but it doesn't really matter. But someone might want to have this spotlight kind of like moving around or something, onto the guy.
Yeah.
So if I build everything in a format that can be like removed or added, or whatever the case may be, like I'm always forward thinking with like, okay, are all the assets as clean as they need to be, so that way they're going to move over to another program. But yeah, that's a good consideration to have. But little things like making these lines like out of strokes and circles and things like that. So obviously they're just little circles that I've cut to give it the pulse, and all I'll do is just cut a circle wherever it needs to be cut. I'm obviously not measuring anything, but so as a stroke originally, it's just that's what you're gonna get. But if you don't know, or you do know, you can change the profile of the stroke, and you can just give it the tapered lines, and there you go. It's nice and easy way to get that pulse, or like the water ripples, if call it that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a quick little trick as well, like using the different profiles. So getting familiar with different profiles that the strokes can be. Obviously, I'll show you quickly if you have. A couple of those different profiles, which do definitely create different feels for the program, for the artwork. Sorry, program. Just make them all a bit better.
And you're just using
So,
Command D then to recopy.
yep, I'm just holding. Yeah, so I just go. Sorry, I had to look at my keyboard. Alt, Alt, and like Shift to keep it in line,
Yeah.
and then I move Alt Shift, and then I let go, and then once it's there, you do Command D, and it will just create duplicates in the same position. So that's another little handy trick to get
Nice.
everything accurate. So yeah, you can see like standard. You can see obviously there's the profile here with the tapered ends. Like they are quite good. And then once you have like if you have an illustration drawn, I'm just gonna put a couple so then I can then. All right, so you've got all those different profiles that you can use, which are great because obviously I use the basic profile for obviously a lot of stuff that I do. It's very straight. It's very it is very like one width the whole way around. But that takes us into this part, which is the old debate of concepting in Photoshop versus Illustrator. It is much of a muchness. It's whatever you're comfortable with, but you can use a couple of these tools, like the pencil tool, maybe just in a light color. The pencil tool is N on the keyboard. You can see it there, N. And maybe I just like I said, it's going to be a little bit sketchy, but I think it'll be fine. So if you want to sketch out, I would just like sketch out my line work in. Oh, that's a bit fat. So yeah, you can still do your whole sketch out in Illustrator. It's just very choppy for me. So let's just do a real simple face. It is very dicey, but I can't make I can't give up.
Can't give up.
I can't give up.
Can't stop, won't stop.
So like you can do your concept like with the pencil tool. Like obviously this is really rough, but we can see like a little bit of a character forming. You know, maybe it's just like a little. Yeah, this will blow out. I know it. You know, you can have like these little guys. Like you can have your drawing done in this. Like you've got your little concept lines. You can do the same thing as Illustrator. You can knock the opacity back and then just start cleaning up your drawing on top of that. Like, you know, it's. I think people are a bit. Like I said, it is a little bit jumpy here, so it's a bit harder to draw at the moment. But it is quite easy to use that pencil and concept in here, and then going in, you know, with let's say just tidy it up with the pen tool. But let's go through these different brushes. So let's see. So if you were drawing this circle, obviously it's clean. That's probably like the most. That's where I'm usually at with all this line work. I like to use just standard basic brush.
Like the thickness.
Yeah, it's just very like consistent around. But the second you kind of do stuff like this, like you get a little bit more of a, you know, natural feel, a bit more of that pressure sensitivity without having to worry about, oh, I don't know, no Wacom, or I don't have pressure sensitivity for the blob tool, you know, like it's you can just use that brush, and now that, you know, it really does add a lot to the artwork if you're using brushes that are like a little bit more a bit varied in weight. Like it looks nice, like it's yeah, it gives it a very natural feel. So like I'd play around with a lot of these just to see where they come in handy. Sometimes they don't work, and you'll probably just want to use the uniform one where it's just very clean. But yeah, concepting in Illustrator is a can do, not a shouldn't be done. Like it's, you know, there's nothing to stop you from doing it all in Illustrator. It's just personal preference. I know I have in the past said that I do a lot of mine in Photoshop, but I have there's actually videos on my Instagram where I've done like a full skull artwork using like squares, circles, like using, you know, normal shapes and stuff from Illustrator, and then being able to use the pencil tool to create like the finished artwork. So it is possible. It is it's a different kind of feel overall, but like the beauty of it is that like I can then come in here and just start coloring this stuff so easy, you know, like it's like that would be the pro to doing it in Illustrator opposed to Photoshop. As easy as Photoshop is, still pixel based, it's still gonna have its limitations, where Illustrator is always gonna reign supreme when it comes to like upscaling or downscaling artwork. With that said, I don't know if you just saw like when you upscale, be very cautious of that stroke width that changes as you go bigger and smaller. So if you know your artwork's pretty much there, always, I mean, it's the same issue I just had up the top, and appearance, and you're pretty safe to go smaller and retain that same artwork, and bigger without the stroke blowing out and becoming, you know, ridiculous.
Yeah, because technically the stroke is staying the same, so you're increasing the shape.
Correct.
But the stroke is staying at, you know, you've said you want it to be 5 pixels wide at the widest point or something.
Correct. So it's
going, yeah, that's cool. And then you make it as big as a poster, it's still going to be like 5 pixels wide. Yeah.
Like it does look like, obviously that looks like a small stroke, but it's in kind of relation to the artwork itself, it hasn't changed from the width we've got here. So that's expanding the strokes and things like that,
Yeah.
expanding shapes. Be mindful of. Um, that is very important because it is one of those things that like maybe it gets overlooked. Like Flynn and I were talking and I didn't even realize. So like I could have sat there all day being like, why isn't it going in there? But yeah, just being careful with kind of those things as well when you're outputting art is important. But yeah, have a play with these different strokes to get different results from like like if I put a different stroke on this, of course it's going to look completely different. Well, let's do it from over here.
Maybe zoom in a bit so we can see.
Yeah, I couldn't see the. So obviously, like different shapes are going to do different things. Like that's going to look like a ripple. That's just looks kind of like one, but just a little bit messier. Doesn't work. Like just explore, like go through things. Like I used to spend the longest time just doing things one way and not deviating from exploring the app. But like there's so many things within sections that really do like they come in handy, and then you're like, oh wow, I wish I knew that,
Yeah.
10 years ago. But that's fine, we're here now. So yeah, and another little trick for I guess I'm gonna just use this little artwork for a bit just to explain something. So this little artwork, I wanted all the lines to kind of be round, but let's, for the sake of this exercise, get rid of some of this stuff. Oops. So you can use, this is another couple of ways to do, I guess, tapered lines in particular. So again, we've got the one uniform stroke. We could just go in. This is obviously the quickest way. Just change that, and it's already tapered.
Yeah.
And or we could do like this. So this is probably true to life. It's going to make me look more tired if I just put
sleepy.
Yeah, sleepy Dale. So we can have. Oops. Yeah, so you can do it like that, or there's this in here. There's the width tool that you can use, and you can see the little demo that's going on there. It's like you can put these little points in, so I can grab it from here. So you can put your this mark, that's I would call it like a keyframe in there, and then it creates these like, so it's going to taper, but it's only going to taper to this point. But if I move that line, so you got to stay on the path like a roller coaster, you can see it kind of thins it out as you go. So that taper is still happening, but if this gets closer, obviously it squares off, and then the further it goes, the whole line will shift.
Yeah.
And then I can shift it from the other side as much or as little as I want. So there's that as well. The width tool is quite handy.
Yeah, width tool is like underrated. I don't think it gets used quite a lot, but it's really amazing in like logo design and typography or lettering, I should say.
And I think I obviously like by very far it's mostly illustration and stuff that I do. So it's like I've only found the use for it like by doing stuff like this. But I think the beauty of it is that sometimes it's just like this, using the profile width to be this isn't exactly there. So I can go in and get that width tool and start like, changing its placement, or like maybe I don't want it, tape it on both ends as much, and I can get like different effects quite quickly.
Yeah.
So that's absolutely like another time saver as well. Like I said, you can do it either way. There is no right or wrong. It's just about exploring those like different points, I guess, like what works quicker for you, or maybe you need you want the inside of this to have another point so that you can taper it in here as well, like who knows, whatever. At least you've got that luxury when you change it over here and the profile's just like that. You're limited. That's it. That's all you're going to be doing. So yeah, that's a little I don't know how much you're going to use it, but it's definitely worth knowing about.
Yeah.
All right. So, and then I've got once I've got this stuff, I've got all my little artwork components and stuff. I'd always have a file, called the working files. So I know that I've always got my raw, untouched kind of stuff, and then I'll just start grabbing stuff, bringing them into my artwork, placing them down, coloring, all that stuff. But I've always got these to fall back on in case of something going wrong at any point.
So you kind of make a sticker sheet or something in a separate file and kind of just keep them separated. They're easy to select. They just live somewhere, it's safe. So that when you're going into kind of the final artwork, you can play around and mess around with it.
Well, yeah, and because you don't want to be okay, I've locked all this in, and then I don't know, you start subtracting that out of there, and then you're like, oh, but I need that black, I want to put it over here. It's better to have everything editable always, because of that exact reason we spoke about before. There's always going to be a reason someone's going to need your art assets or files to kind of rebuild or animate. So basically all I'm doing is pulling it in. Obviously, I've got my layout, you can see headers, sub copy, things like that, and then basically just it comes down to what it like we said before, what's the poster supposed to be selling, or what are you trying to advertise? This is clearly advertising nothing, but it draws you in, and you kind of poster design, what's going on, who's playing, where's it at, you get all the details and put them in there, making sure that I think for me, everything should have kind of an element of interesting to it. Why is there a love heart? It doesn't matter. It just makes me oh, there's a love heart.
Did notice the love heart. Yeah,
the April is on a sticker. It's not just in body copy. Everything to me should feel exciting, and everything should stand out and kind of live alone. You can see there's no graphical, I guess, illustration here, but it still feels the same energy, the same fun. It's I could simplify it and still get what this does out of a couple of key points, I guess.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's important to make sure that all of that stuff is considered, and that you do have your little, I guess that's a sticker sheet, a flash sheet that you can pull things from, and even while you're in this file, maybe you want to do all your testing and stuff on this file, so that you can make out which one's gonna look the best for what you need. So I'll do the little,
so your couple of iterations, right? So you can make them go a bit crazy, go in a couple of different directions, and then kind of decide which one works. Yeah. So
I just do maybe I want to try a different couple of ways to put this type in. So I can do standard, play with this this, with the leading just being adjusted over here on the character tab. And then maybe it's I want to see if is it straight it goes in. To go in doing, we could try the envelope and see what that looks like in there. It might be too much, maybe it's too hard to read.
Yeah, so you got to balance the legibility with making it interesting, right?
Yeah, what's the best way to do it? Which way is the most fun when you look at it? So I did the envelope distort on this one, but I did play around with it because I couldn't read it very well. But it's I think doing stuff like this and testing all the different techniques that you could do, or different ways that this works. Is it just that it's reversed out? Is it clearer if it's white or something? Really having that little like a play area that's safe, that's not gonna, ruin this artwork. And you're like, oh, where's that original one that I was using? I know a lot of people are notorious for having like artboards with artworks, all placed over like, there might be like a circle here, a circle here, like all these different elements when you open their Illustrator file and you're like, whoa, what is going on? But
Yeah. I
they
tend to
think
do
it's
that. I'm guilty of that. I'll have like elements all over, like off artboards, just
yeah.
random.
I think if I've opened a few like artworks in the past due to other jobs I've worked at and stuff like that, and I don't think it's a problem to have it. But if you're presenting or sending off final art, just delete it because
Yeah, I don't think I would send
yeah,
off final artwork or share it with anyone. It's more my giant working file.
yeah. I think it's hard because people just are so set in their ways, and then once you've done an artwork, you're like, all right, send it off, and then they forget that I can see like all these off the artboard, there might be a whole
Yeah.
bunch of different assets that just I'm like, why is the file so slow? Like, why is it, all these additional anchor points and stuff that aren't needed,
Yeah.
they appear on the side, or like they've been clipping masks and stuff set that are just like a bit crazy. It's like, yeah, be careful of leaving too much on that artboard. Yeah, so we've got like this sort of stuff, and yeah, like these, like this is a whole, like obviously there's like the heart was made by like, just doing it really is slow Illustrator. But like, so the heart was done with the pen tool, and it was just like making a heart shape, mirror, or flip it horizontally. That was the heart. The the sticker is it was a square that I just ended up putting like a few extra anchor points on.
You just kind of manually tweak them around.
Yeah, just so it's not too uniformed, I guess. So like might just make it a little bit like that. Like so this the sticker was just a square. So there's all these basic shapes, and like there's not it's not real. I think the tricks are kind of like how do you make the rectangle tool and the add anchor point work together to create something. Like so there's all these standard default tools that everyone thinks that you shouldn't have to know how to draw a jagged square or something. Like if you don't want to draw, you don't have to. Like if you
Yeah.
don't have the luxury of tablets or iPads. And I did have a question actually. Someone asked about, is the app on the computer much different to the iPad? I actually don't know. I'm not certain what like lacks or what pros and cons each have. I only
With
ever use it.
Illustrator on the iPad.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not sure if there's any kind of difference, to be honest, but I do know that I only use the like on my Mac at
Yeah.
the moment.
I mean, I can talk about that. I mean, the vectors work in the same way. So like the engine behind it, the way vector artwork is saved and exported is the same. It's
Same, yeah.
but what you'll get is far less features on the iPad version. So it's much more lightweight. So it's much more. But I don't think there's anything here that you couldn't do on the iPad. Just having a look,
No,
like
I
like
think
shape and Pathfinder and things like that all work really well.
I
And
I think you
um,
might lack in like how I was showing you earlier. That there's the new 3D in
oh
Illustrator
yeah,
is
I don't think the 3D's in there. I could be wrong, but I
yeah,
wouldn't think so. To be
which
honest, I
is
haven't played around with it a lot. I've done a stream on this. I actually really like the 3D, the new 3D features in.
I think it's great. I think I haven't found a use for it in what I do yet, and I admittedly I still find myself going, oh, okay, can I just go to because so we're in
You want to
Illustrator
go
now.
old school?
Yeah, I go back to classic. I'm like, I want the classic one. So the difference being, I guess, for me is that I don't know that I'm fully comfortable with this thing yet,
Right.
where I know that for the most part, whenever I use 3D in Illustrator, it's only ever been for things like if I want to do text, and it's always the same thing actually. So I just that, as you can see, that new 3D is the top one, and it's quite straightforward. It's just like, it creates this thing. It's got like nicer lighting, all that stuff. But I only ever do things like this where it was like I only want it to go up and then perspective. That's it. Like there was never anything else. And then, but see, this is the problem. There's always this issue of white appearing, like color not filling, and I don't know really what that's from. And it's like you have to get the lighting right for it to kind of work. But if you don't have the 3D or you don't want to use 3D, also you can always be like,
well, you can change in the newer 3D tools. I'm going to sell you on them. You can change the type of lighting like really easily. There's like about 4 settings at the top. You can just kind of go pick which one. You can change it from hard to soft and the direction and the angle and stuff.
Oh yeah, and I do like, actually I did use this. This is why I was using it. I was doing a shirt for this band, and I needed I just wanted a triangle, like an outline of a triangle, but like a prism kind of thing. And I was like, there's got to be one online that I can find and just reference. I could have made it, but okay, let's just talk about this for 1 second, because like it was actually saved my life. Didn't save my life, but just saved the job. Okay. So I wanted a shape, and I wanted it to be kind of like, well, I needed it to be 3D. So let's just say this is our shape. And I wanted it like this. And then I was like, well, I wanted this shape, but in 3D.
Right.
And then I went into 3D and I was like, oh, okay, cool. So I can get this. So yeah, it makes it 3D. That's great. And then I noticed that, like, okay, so I can get it back to straight.
I find it easier to play with like the settings and the sliders on the side.
On the sliders? Yeah. And then I was like, oh, okay, so it's got materials. This is the part that kind of got me, because I wanted it concrete for this particular job. And I think there was actually like all right, so you can see it adds texture, like it added texture, and I was able to take it to Photoshop and do all the, like, I guess like the illustration off the back of that, and it was super handy. So I got the exact triangle I needed. It had the bevel, it had everything, and I was like, oh, okay. That was the only one time I used it. So Illustrator's over here looking like it's in Photoshop, and like I feel like I'm in 2 different programs at once, but that part's pretty handy. Like I did use it for that. So you can
I can see you using that, right? Like in a poster, like having the big triangle in the middle or something, and then bringing it into Photoshop and having stuff like artwork coming intersecting with the negative space.
I just had a bunch of photos and stuff that I kind of then did this like stipple looking artwork, and then it all just kind of looked cohesive. And I was like, okay, well, without that triangle, I would have been just like, where am I going to find this object? But I did it, and it was like, I know it's just a triangle, but I thought it was really cool that, you can see there's a whole bunch of materials in there. Kind of blows my mind, because this reminds me of like, some 3D sculpting program, like it's got the same interface. It doesn't even feel like I'm in Illustrator looking at that. Maybe I'm just like an old dog that doesn't want to know anything new.
No, it's a bit like that, isn't it? Yeah, because it's definitely like because this is from Substance, so Substance 3D. And it's almost like a plugin that shouldn't exist or something, but it does. It does work. And
then I wonder why the pencil tool's so laggy. It's because they had to render all these little spheres over here.
You can also, if anyone's interested in watching like you in the Substance stuff, it is really fun to play around with, and you can get heaps more. There's a little link in there as well if you want to go get. There's like thousands of different textures, so it's quite addictive and fun to go through.
Yeah.
Cover your type in like moose hair and stuff.
Why not? Just cause. But so once I've now established all my stuff, I build my artwork. Like I said, there's no grid here, and I'm sure my designer friends would be mad, and they're getting uneasy, but that's fine. Like I'm an illustrator. That's my go-to. I have fun with everything I do. I try to make everything feel like it's, it fits in. I think it still reads good. I think it still tells a message. Um, but maybe, yeah, you do want to take it into Photoshop, and maybe we can talk about it on tomorrow's stream about just like the things you can do to lift this a little bit more. Obviously, I like this, like I'm a black and red kind of guy, like clearly. I just,
Yeah.
I think it's like it's bold. It tells you exactly what you need to know. But I also think like with all those little tricks and tips, like you can get really creative with it. Like you can do some interesting stuff with the text and the font, and the imagery and stuff like that, and create some really cool things. Yeah, and have a play with all these different like finishes that Illustrator has. Creating concepts from shapes and having a bit of like a forethought, or like having some direction from the start. Like this always helps thumbnail sketches and things like that alike. But yeah, that's kind of like that's the core, I guess, ways that I get to my end result. Like it's only a handful of tools. Like I know there's a whole bunch of like perspective and things like that, but I kind of, like I said, I could work on this program for the next 10 years and still do it the same way I have been. So yeah, it's good to explore. I'm finding new things out, and I'm always open to hearing new things. So if anyone else has any new tips, then please share.
Nice. Well, that actually takes us to time, so that was a good kind of final wrap up. So we will be back with Dale with part 2.
Yeah,
tomorrow.
Awesome.
Festival day 2, which is always the roughest.
Yeah, it's the roughest, but it's going to be good.
You always have fun on day 1 and maybe go a little bit too hard, and day 2 is a little bit rough. But yeah, we'll be back. We'll see you then. Thanks, Dale. Thanks for hanging out with us.
No worries, man. Thank you.
All right. See you, everyone.